everybody. Okay, welcome back. We're looking today at simple questions in Greek. We're looking at Jeremy Duff, Elements of New Testament Greek, section 4.5. We're on page 51. Asking questions in Greek at this basic level is really quite simple. There are some complexities, which we'll get to later, which are really useful and will help you to understand some nuances in the Greek New Testament when we get to that. But at this stage, actually asking questions in Greek is much easier than English, because all you have to do is slap a question mark at the end of the sentence. In fact, Greek has this in common with a number of other languages, like French, for example, where you just rely on your tone of voice when you're speaking, or the fact that there's a question mark when you're writing. And so here's a statement, which actually this one is taken from the examples on the next page, page 52, Hotheos akouei, question mark. Hotheos akouei. That's how you should say it, or words to that effect, if you're trying to emphasize the fact that it's a question when it's spoken. Okay, so the way we translate this is simply to translate it in the normal way and then turn it into a question in English. So the verb akouei comes from akouo, meaning I hear, but this is third person singular, so this means he hears. He hears. Then you've got subject, hotheos, in the nominative, so that means that hotheos, which means God, takes the place of the inbuilt subject in the verb, and so hotheos akouei means God hears. We have a question mark, and so we need to turn this, God hears, into a question. Now this is the point where you realise, pity those who have to learn English as a second language, because it's quite tricky to do this. What you'd need to do here is to add an extra verb at the beginning, like does, and then conjugate the verb differently here. Does God hear? And then add the question mark. And if you've ever tried to teach English as a foreign language, and I've done this, I do it at the moment, it's lots of fun, but one of the difficult things to do is to help people to understand how to ask questions in English, because you have to juggle words around and conjugate verbs differently and then add extra verbs and so on. So, hotheos akouei, does God hear? You've got the easy job when you're translating from Greek into English if you know English already, because you already know how to operate the dodgy language, the language that's more difficult, English. So, hotheos akouei means, does God hear? That's the simple way to ask a question in Greek. However, just as in English and other languages, there are other kinds of questions that you can ask, and in such instances you use what we typically call a question word. Question words like what, where, why, when, how, so on and so forth. And Greek has a similar range of question words. Here's an example of one. Pose is a question word, and here's a sentence. Pose hotheos lege. Pose hotheos lege. And so we're just going to translate this in the same way, noticing that there's a question mark, so my enunciation of that was probably not right. You probably want to say it something like pose hotheos lege, just to emphasize that it's a question. Okay, lege, third person singular of lego, meaning I speak, say, or tell. So he or she or it speaks. I'm going to put the question mark in here just because I've noticed it, and the typical thing that students will do is to forget to put the question mark in at the end of a sentence, and you don't want to do that. You'll lose marks in a test or misunderstand the text of scripture if you're translating it. You don't want to do that. So when you see it, pop it in. Hotheos is the subject, takes the place of the inbuilt subject as there. So God speaks, and then pose. You've got to work out what to deal with this. So how to deal with this. Pose means how. And again, this is where, as an English speaker, you have a significant advantage over speakers of other languages, because when you're translating from Greek into English, you know you can't write how God speaks. You have to translate this somewhat differently. You have to rearrange or add extra words and so on to the sentence in English, how God speaks, to make it make sense in English. And you do it in much the same way. How does God speak? Question mark. So have pity, if you're a Bible seminary, Bible college or theological seminary at the moment, maybe you've got a student in your class who's a French speaker as a native language. He's operating in his second language. For him already, it will be difficult to do this thing. to turn an English statement into an English question. He's got to go from Greek into English and then do that tricky thing as well. Poor guy or girl who's trying to work that one out. Okay, but that's basically how to do it. It's fairly straightforward. Simply add a question mark, or change your tone of voice, or add a question word and a question mark. There are complexities to asking questions which are actually really exciting and help you to get to grips with the subtleties of what the text is saying in Scripture. But we will leave those for another day. That'll do for now. Keep working hard, 20 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day, 5 or 6 days a week, and we'll have you reading the New Testament in no time at all. God bless. Bye for now.